Hi, so my name is Isaac. I am former Navy. I served 2 years. I was August of 2020 to September of 2022. I was a submariner. I was an ETV, so I did electronics, and yeah, I was stationed in Virginia,
You're
and
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
oh yeah, you were saying?
So AECF, you go FC or ET. So for this
Yeah,
specific, if ET for submarines is like ETV.
yeah. So like the four rates that you get, you could go fire controlman. You could go like the IT route, so doing information, um, things of that nature, and you could be an ET, which is like ET, and then V for like navigation, so you're an electronics technician, but you do quartermaster stuff, and then you could be a sonar technician. So you basically, it's a roll of the dice. You get one of those four. You're assigned one of those rates. You get your orders like right out of boot camp, and it tells you what your rate is, and then you get whisked off to Connecticut for training. So yeah, I got my orders. I looked at it, and it's not the actual rating on the orders, but it's like the training code. So
Yeah.
like the training code that I got made me. I looked at it and I was thinking that it was like the actual rate. So it said like MT, and I was looking at it. I was like, oh, I'm a missile technician. Like so, I would go to A school, and I was thinking, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be a missile technician. That's so cool. And yeah, and then they're like, nope, you're an ET, you're an electronics technician. And I was just, my heart just like broke.
Yeah. Luck of the draw.
And yeah, I was like, oh man, oh, navigation. I don't want to do that. I want to blow things up. So, uh, but yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like navigation was totally dope. Making sure you're in the right area, being responsible for all those things, and then like I didn't realize until I was qualified like that maintenance can be like really fun sometimes. Going in there with your tools, getting dressed down, making sure you don't get electrocuted, and
Oh,
working with bits
demetallizing.
and bobs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The like yeah, making sure that nothing's live, conducting those checks. Yeah,
Yeah, ETs and ICs have it rough. I was in charge of the CE division on ships, at
oh
least
wow,
a CE division for a little
yeah,
bit, and luckily, I had really good guys and girls that they knew what they were doing and they supported me well when I was in charge of them. So I mainly just did admin
yeah.
and then, but man, that was a lot of gear for a very few amount of people. Was it the same on a submarine?
Oh yeah, we were always backlogged in maintenance. I mean, that's kind of how it is. Like, we have so many. If you look at Subbrief, he was recently talking about how like a third of our submarines are just out of, not ready to go because of how much maintenance that they need to do. So like whenever we were in port, there was so much that needed to be done. Your weeklies, things just break. Like we were an old submarine from
Yeah.
like the 80s. Yeah,
Yeah, as a technical writer myself, I agree. Like it's one of those things where underway, like there's like some, right? There's only certain checks you can do when you're out at sea, and there's only certain checks you can do when you're in port.
yeah,
And sometimes you
yeah.
just felt like it's like we can't do it. We're not in port, but it's gonna pop, and you got to do it. And it's like I can't do
Right,
it though.
right. Yeah, yeah, you have to wait, and like, yeah, and then part of what's so bad is like when you're in dry dock and you have all your quals that you need to get done, but like when you're in dry dock or when you're in port, like the people who sign off your qual cards, they
Oh
they're
yeah.
they're always gone. They're always going home. That Yeah, and so it's always that. So you always like have to get incentives, and you're always hoping that you can go out to sea to finally get those qual cards signed. And yeah, it's a life. There's some things you never expect that they would be like kind of difficult or kind of annoying, but there's always those little things that you have to look out for.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
always seems like too whenever you get someone during the dry dock. For and then for those listening who don't know,
Hmm.
dry dock is when you pull in and then you're actually in like a construction yard and your ship or submarine is out of the water, and so that's you're getting upgrades or maybe some work on your hull that you couldn't do in the ocean, and you get new people that will come during that time, and you're like, yeah, you can get your basic quals, but you can't touch gear, and you won't learn your actual job until we actually get back in the water, and so it could be a really I would say monotonously and repetitive day. So it could be
Yeah,
depressing at times.
yeah. And so like you, we were in dry dock for like 6 months, and so like I had everything ready to go uh, except for like my warfare device and like my at sea. I forget what it's called, but like qualified and rate.
Yeah.
Those are like the last two things. Quartermaster of the watch, and yeah, like it's almost comedic. Like every 30 minutes, the top side they report. They'd be like, do not. There's sailors working in the sail. Do not rotate. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Radiate. Like he was reading off a script, and so you'd listen to that. You'd just be like, oh my gosh. Like every 30 minutes. Um,
They still do
yeah,
that
I
in
would get.
the yards for you because we always have
Yeah,
people work. So a loft, right? So we call it a loft. So a loft.
yeah.
Their personnel working aloft, not rotate, radiate any energized electronic equipment
Oh,
while personnel working aloft, and then the zone.
for us. Oh, yeah, for us they call it like there's people working in the sail because like the submarine we call it the sail, the thing that's sticking out of the tube. So yeah, we just have that specific terminology for it. We don't have any masts or anything.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to repeat it every 30 minutes. But for in the yard period, we stopped doing that because it's global aloft all the time, so it's this is understood at that
Mm-hmm.
point. A lot of
Yeah.
crane operations too. But yeah, I mean,
Oh yeah.
during normal operations, you're not in the yards, and you just pull alongside somewhere, and you're just doing. You may have divers and people working over the side and people working
Oh yeah.
aloft, and it's like you hear every
We'd
15
have
minutes someone's just
divers.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just never ending.
Yeah. And then like we'd shoot water slugs, like the torpedoes. And then we always had a joke being like the torpedo men were always shooting those darn water slugs, um, but they were just doing what they needed to do to make sure that the torpedo tubes were working. So the boat would always be shaking. It was a fun time for sure.
Yeah, we for us it's air slugs for torpedoes.
Air slugs.
Yeah, yeah. So the same thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever get any underway time or any like deployments or anything?
Oh yeah. I went on a couple of deployments. I went out to see. Yeah, like once we finally got out of the dry dock, like we were always doing stuff. We did sea trials. My favorite experience, I guess simultaneously, my favorite and least favorite was when we went on ISEX. We went to the North Pole.
Oh, okay. So you got your blue nose.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, that was an experience. Yeah, it's kind of a secret tradition. I can't get into the details of it, but yeah,
Made you sign
oof.
a page 13.
Yeah, there's crazy stuff that happens, or everything. I can't get the smell of mayonnaise and mustard out of my nose, even after all this time. It still lingers.
Yeah. So I did the crossing line ceremony. I'm a shellback, so I didn't sign any page 13.
Oh,
So
oh
I could
man,
talk about some of that stuff.
yeah,
There
yeah,
was it oh the coloring they put into chilled water, the green, so you could
yeah, yeah,
differentiate it. That was
yeah.
everywhere. We were like had a
Oh,
trail of it. It
jeez.
was all over the deck. We were being sprayed with it. We had to like bob for onions and that. It was crazy. It was fun. It was definitely a great
Yeah.
time. I know with anyone listening that doesn't know, it sounds like hazing or they're bullying, but it's a fully volunteer thing, and it's
Oh
more
yeah,
fun than anything, really. Although I did lose my
yeah.
temper at one point because we were it was like 4 hours or 5 hours in of because you can't stand, you got to crawl on your hands and knees, and we're on
Right,
basket,
right.
so we're
Oh
all wearing
God.
knee pads and gloves, just to protect ourselves. And it was like they made us go around it a couple of times. Like they had like this circuit that you had to do of this, silly stuff. And one of them was they had this ice cold water in one of the ribs that you had to do row, row, row your boat as you're bailing out the water, and they were spraying you with water. But one of them hit me in the head with the nozzle by accident, and I lost it. I was like, I'm done. Let me see Poseidon. I'm getting out of here.
Oh man, lucky they didn't give us gloves or knee pads or anything. They just sent us into the tubes. Oof.
Oh no, they didn't give us that. We were just smart enough to get it. We had some people
Oh,
that
okay.
didn't, and they were like duct
Yeah.
taping their shower shoes to their hands and knees.
Jeez. Oh man, then they have to pull it off afterwards because they got hair on their legs. And
Oh, but you were soaked the
oh,
entire time, so it just
yeah.
at one point they were just trying to keep it on. It was falling off, you know.
Oh
But
my god.
yeah, no, I mean at the time it wasn't.
Good times.
Uh, yeah, it's definitely fondly I look back at it, but there were times where I was
Yeah.
just so annoyed because I was cold and I was wet and I didn't get to eat because they
Oh
gave
yeah.
us green eggs and ham, and then right when I went to eat, they're like, you can't use your hands, and I didn't hear that, so I went to go grab the food, and then a fire hose blew it off the side of the ship, and I was like, you're gonna. That was my breakfast, and they're like, "You shouldn't use your hands." And then they're like, "Go on to the next station." I was like, "Oh, I'm so hungry right now."
Yeah. No. Oh, that's awesome. Those are good times.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely things I think back about it where, I would say for me personally, I like about 70% of my career where there's I just wake up and I'm like, yep, I'm looking forward to going to work. And there's
That's
30% of the time
awesome.
where it's like, wow, I should have never joined the military.
Yeah.
But I would say,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had jobs before personally. Man, I'm interviewing you and I'm talking a lot. Where
Mm.
I hated most of it, like 90% of the job. So I feel like 70% of liking it, 30% of I chalk it up to it's a job. You're not always gonna like it. Well, what about
Yeah.
you at the very least?
Oh, I honestly, for me, it was more like 75-25 on the other way around. I mean, there's a whole lot of context. In hindsight, I am so glad that I joined. Like I learned so much. When you join the Navy, people are like, "Oh, you joined because you want to see the world." There's the money, there's like that job security. Like when you join, like more than anything, it's the experience. It's the skills that you learn, and it's like the interpersonal skills, like especially on a submarine. Like for me, the crew that you work with, like you spend 80% of your time with them. Like you get up with them, you're with them all the time, and then you go to bed, like and the same, oftentimes in the same rack. Like there's the hot racking situation, so you get out and somebody gets back in the rack, so you're spending like all that time with them.
Yeah.
And so like there's that camaraderie that's there. But then there's that conflict, right? Because like everybody's like kind of mad about something. Everybody has their home life, their struggles, their problems, and like we have to you have to give up like your work life balance, right? Um, in port, sometimes you're working like as much as 17 hours a day.
Oh yeah.
You have duty. We had a 3 section rotation, so every 3 days you're spending the entire time on the boat, and like back to back work days. So people, you basically never had like a weekend to yourself. I imagine it's pretty much the same in the surface fleet, but yeah. So like um, all the time, like you're every day, like you ask yourself, at least I asked myself, like what am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? What's the point? And most days, like I had a good answer. Like I'm doing this so I can make sure that my girlfriend is safe, make sure that that there's nothing between um, or that there's a submarine between like the Russians or the Chinese and the East Coast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like when I go up and I stand on watch at topside with my M16, like I'm doing this so that my shipmates can do what they need to do to feel safe. But I'd always have to ask myself, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? And like 75% of the time, at the end of the day, I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd gone surface. I wish I had done something else. I hate this. And 25% of the time, I'm like, this is the best job in the world. Um, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I feel like everyone's experience in the Navy is always different.
hmm
Some being that I stayed in, like I probably wouldn't have this opinion that I'm about to say right now unless I had
Mm,
stayed in for as long as I have now. I would say I don't know, maybe just from the other perspective would be there's two navies. If what I've come to
yeah,
agree
yeah,
with. There's the navy that gives you your paycheck, makes those rules about uniforms and stuff. It's the navy you never meet. It's the big man in the sky, right? And then there's
yeah,
and then there's your navy, which is who's your chief, who's your divo, who's
yeah.
your LPO, the people that control your liberty and whether or not you get to go home at a good time, or if you
Right.
end up staying late, if at the very least you feel accomplished, and maybe people who take care of you and stuff like that. So I can't control the
Yeah,
big navy, but I can control my local navy, and I figured that out
yeah.
where. Similar to you, I had someone who's on the same ship as me, but he was like, screw the Navy. This sucks. The Navy's stupid. I hate people. He's like, you're pretty cool,
Uh-huh.
but everyone else sucks. And I was like, and that's when it clicked. What I'm not anti-military or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. What I'm saying is I'm pro
Okay. Yeah,
sailors. I'm pro my people.
yeah.
We're gonna get the mission done, but I'm gonna make sure my people are taken care of at the same time. And
I
yeah,
yeah.
so sadly you meet
I
people
love
that
that.
there's sadly you meet people that are like, crap. What was I gonna go with this? Or it was like, oh, yeah, right. I've met toxic leadership. I try not to be one. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure at one point somewhere thought I was, or maybe I was, and I try to be, open to feedback when it comes to that kind of stuff. Because I don't want to be, because I've
Yeah,
had toxic leadership, and one of them was
yeah.
there's this dude made E6 in 5 years, just killed it, like aced every test, and he was a
On
hard
the
worker.
surface fleet.
Yeah, and he's smart, super super
Wow.
smart.
Yeah.
Um, and he got out and he was like, yeah, no, I just, the Navy's been good, but I joined so I could pay for my college. And he worked hard
Mm-hmm.
until the day he left. He didn't get like I have 5 months left, I'm just going to cake it. He,
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
dude, really smart dude and hard worker, good work ethic and nice to be around. And also push people to be their best. But he was like, no, I'm not re-enlisting, I'm getting out. And
Yeah.
the leadership was like, oh, so have fun flipping burgers. And it's like, are you serious?
Oh,
Like, why
Jesus.
would you say
Yeah.
that? So
Uh-huh.
sadly, there's this, when you hear some people are like, oh, the Navy was great to me, or the Marine Corps was great to me, or blah blah blah, whatever, and then some people are like, nah, man, you're drinking
Yeah.
the juice, you're drinking the Kool Aid, and I really just think it
Yeah.
was their local Marine Corps, their local Navy was just
Oh,
bad
yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. I was always trying to like put a pin on it. I love how you say that there's two navies because like the navy the RDC or RTC like that's that's one navy. That's like big navy, right? You go in there and you have your military bearing and you have your RDCs and everything is controlled. Everything is like it's motivational. It's all about the spirit of the Navy. Like you're living history. Like you're living through history and learning the culture.
Oh yeah.
And then you have like the submarine Navy where it's local and everything is like right in front of you and it's like the real world. And I've learned like I came to this understanding like boot camp and A school, like there's only so much that the RDCs can do to prepare you for that local Navy.
Oh yeah.
Like it's so different. It's night and day. Yeah, and I mean my I debate in my head as to whether or not I had like a good command. My chief, he was the prior force ANAV, so like he was the assistant navigator for the entire submarine force for a time. He's this
Whoa.
like yeah, insanely highly qualified. He would often get into arguments with like officers and like this is kind of that like oh my gosh moment that eye opener of like okay there's definitely two sides to this coin. He would yell at our weapons officer who was an '04 and he was like a senior chief and the senior chief ANAV he would come on top, right? He was like he was so good at his job and he was so talented and competent, but at the same time like um, he was so so aggressive, so hard to talk to. I I couldn't have a good bond with him a lot of the time. And part of it was, the environment. Like, we didn't have like an ET chief. Like, there should be a chief and then the ANAV. We just had the ANAV being both the chief and the ANAV.
Oh, that's
So
difficult.
he had, like, don't get me wrong, he had so much on his plate. But also, like, at the same time, like, I never felt, um, until he opened up to me, until he saw that I was, falling apart. Like, uh, I never felt like I could open up to him. And sometimes it was, sometimes it was like almost physical. Like, how loud he would yell, how much he was like, my way or the highway. Um, there's like sometimes, like, he didn't mean to, like, uh, body slam me, but like he did. 'Cause he was so angry. Like, um, I just, like, I have to, like, ask myself, like, did I go to the good command? Did I go to a bad command? But, like, on the plus side, like, I walked out of it with, like, so much knowledge on conflict management and conflict resolution and de-escalation. Like, I learned so much of how to communicate your needs in a workplace relationship. Um, and, like, I walked out with, like, in addition to, like, some trauma, like, I walked out of there with good skill sets that I never got to learn growing up. So yeah, yeah,
Yes, I mean, definitely the thing that's been talked about a lot in like multiple sources, not just military times or Navy times or Marine Corps times or anything like that. It just talks about a lot where sometimes things come down and you're just undermanned, but the mission has to get done. And
yeah,
sadly,
yeah,
that tests leadership where maybe leadership was good, but
yeah,
apply enough pressure and leadership can break down to simple ones and zeros. And
right,
everyone says, you're in the military, just do what you're told, just do what you're told. But it's not that simple. It's never
yeah,
that simple, either as someone who could be E1, E2, E3, whatever it be, or someone who's a chief or an officer. It gets way
hmm,
more dynamic because you can't just yell at someone's face. I mean, sometimes you can yell at someone's face and then say what's up to them in the mess decks later on, but it's not
yeah,
a. You still have to foster a working relationship, whether you say
yeah,
military or civilian. So sadly, things
yeah,
like that do end up breaking down, especially when you're undermanned like that. But
oh yeah,
you mentioned that you learned some like skills at the very least. Is
yeah.
working in the civilian world today, do you like notice any difference between like
Oh yes, yeah. So I work. I'm an engineer at Electric Boat. So I help design submarines now.
oh cool.
Yeah. So, like, I'm lucky enough. I got to carry my experience with me, into the civilian world. And, um, like, things. It's so much easier, right? Like, things are just, like, when you get a task, right? You have to write this paper. You have to write this memo, or whatever. And, like, compared to, um, combating a casualty, or uh, conducting maintenance when you haven't slept the night before,
Yeah,
or any number of things,
I
like
felt
making
that one.
sure that the submarine doesn't go down. Like, it's just a memo, or it's just a piece of paper. It's just a program. Like, you just get it done. And, like, you don't complain anymore, because, like, you remember how hard it used to be. And then you go home at the end of the day, and you go home every day at the end of the day. And it's like, I get to just go home and watch television, or I get to go home and uh, make dinner, or I get to go to the gym and exercise. So, like, that skill set of, I've been through so much worse. I can do so much. This is not hard at all. I can do this. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
that skill set.
I've heard definitely before where um, a friend of my father owns a business, and they whenever they hear that they were in the military, they usually go, "Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's hear. As long as you weren't dishonorably discharged,
Yeah.
like and it could be any other discharge, as long as it wasn't dishonorable. And even then, let me see why, because they're most likely want to hire them, just because of the
Hmm.
work mentality. You know how to work under all this pressure." And
Yeah.
with the lack, sometimes not enough tools, but you make it work, kind of a thing. So, what if I gave you less pressure and more tools? And then you end
Yeah.
up, you just get this better product because you, compared to someone who hasn't, maybe they're a fresh college graduate and they never really worked an arduous job before. So not to say, not the, I don't want to do the whole stip of like, oh, civilians are weak in military. I'm not trying to say that, but it's
Hmm.
already been a mentality for years in the military to work under pressure. So you have
Yep.
this
Yeah.
innate ability to stay focused and get things done in a timely manner. It's drilled into you, you know. So yeah, I definitely
Yeah.
heard that it just military people are usually sought after when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah. And then like in my case, like the skill that I learned is conflict resolution. Like on the submarine that I was on, like um there was a lot of there's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of grudges and a lot of people were like aggressive with each other. There was a lot of there wasn't a lot of like hazing, I'd say, like on my boat. But you know, there's like yelling at each other. There was aggression, and I honestly like when I was on the boat, I was a major contributor to that conflict. Like I didn't know how to get my needs across or how to communicate. And I didn't know how to ignore insults or name calling. Like I didn't know how to do that. I was so sensitive, and um, I like I would get I'd be the aggressor all the time, and I unfortunately my lack of communication and my desire to um, not be terrified all the time. Like the way that I combated that was through being angry and aggressive, and so I was mad all the time. And slowly but surely, like I learned to be better at conflict resolution through failing, like repeatedly not getting the outcome that I wanted in a certain disagreement.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I would
so like
say when I was a junior sailor, I felt the same way. It's something about old school leadership that hasn't fully like been, I don't know, flushed out. Where it was this thing where it's
yeah,
like uh, higher ups felt uh, like you couldn't approach them, and I don't mean like I stubbed my toe and now I want my chief to pat me on the head and kiss it better. It was like, hey, I got some serious stuff going on. You're
yeah,
in charge. I would like some feedback on how I can get this fixed, and
oh,
maybe
yeah,
like, and it makes me feel better if I'm a third class and I tell my second class something who I know just went and drank with me at the bar. I don't really feel a level of comfort. I feel like you're an equal at that point. When I see
mhm,
that dude or that man or woman that's in charge that you don't doesn't go with you to the bar because they could go out with the other khakis, kind of a thing. You feel like, oh, they're the
yeah,
ones that tell us when we can go home. They're the ones that tell us like, hey, we had to get this done, and then they congratulate us, right, and yell at us when it's wrong. That is
yeah,
authority. So if I want
yeah,
someone to help me, it's going to be that person. So something I've
yeah,
definitely, I've had really bad leadership before, and I've had good leadership.
hmm,
Sadly, it sounds like you've had more bad than good, or I'd say not
yeah,
intrusive. It sounds like they came to you a little late, and maybe not enough. Like
yeah,
you were shorthanded. So I always try to personally, still define a line. Hey, I'm still in charge. No, I'm not going to hang out with you over the weekend and play video games with you. But if anything's going on, I will bend over backwards to help you fix this if you got some personal stuff going on. Because it's just common
yeah,
sense. It's not soft hugging leadership. It's if my sailors have stuff going on at home and they come to work messed up because of it, that's not a useful sailor. And then
yeah,
not, I mean, so you can look at it in black and white like that. And at the same time,
yeah.
once again, still a human being. And I was in their
Absolutely,
shoes.
Minry.
I was a E1, E2, E3, E4 before I became chief. So they're experiencing things for the first time is scary sometimes,
Yeah,
even if it's something
yeah,
simple. So you got to help them because the person next to them that they ask might be experiencing it as well. So now you got the blind leading the blind. So
yeah. And I think that's so much. There's two things I want to say regarding that. I think that so much of it, like or this other side of the coin here is like you got to figure out how to speak up. Like if you're struggling, like you got to be able to like talk it out. I didn't really go to my LPO and say like, man, I'm suffering. This is not what I expected it to be. I'm getting my butt kicked. I'm suffering at home. I'm suffering here. I don't know how to do things. Like I never really exactly went to my LPO. I never went to my ANAV. Like I never went to him and was like, man, I'm so scared. Like I'm so scared. I have stories about that, but like I never really spoke up. They eventually came to me because I was just not able to, like, I was just suffering from like mental breakdowns, and I was just not able to um, do my job properly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like that side of it too. Um, and like I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned in the Navy is that like it's not it's not the rank that brings authority and respect. It's not the rank. Like you have the positions, yeah. Like there's the big Navy that says, oh, you need to listen to the chief. The chief knows best. Blah blah blah. But like in the local Navy, it's not the rank. It's your skills. It's your experience. It's your competence. So like I had a sea brother. I had two sea brothers, and they were in the same. Well, one of them was pretty much in the same class as me, and he came like a couple months later, and like um, pretty much immediately, like I was farther ahead of him in terms of quals. I was eventually a third class when he was still a seaman. And I had this like I was kind of power tripping, I was kind of like, oh, I'm the third class. I have the authority here, but like my C brother, like he grew up in a different situation than I did. He grew up on the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, and so like he had way better skills of managing pressure, managing conflict, learning how to do things, learning how to like fit in, and I was always just kind of like an ass to him. And he had like way more respect on the boat than I did, even though I outranked him and had my fish. He was just far more competent, and people could depend on him. Um, so like I grew to respect him a lot.
I feel that. I
Yeah.
definitely had a similar situation where I didn't really grow up in a struggling household or anything. I was blessed to
Mhm.
have, good parents that are still together and they protected us and, like, provided everything for us, no problem. And so there's not everyone's like that in the world, which was to me because I was maybe a little overprotected, but I couldn't
Yeah.
comprehend not having both parents or not living in a safe environment, kind of a thing.
Oh yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
see people that struggle with that, and then they come out of that environment and now providing for themselves, their social skills and the way, like you said, being able to handle under or operate under pressure is amazing, and it's like a weird skill that you
Yeah.
develop sadly through experience. You can't watch someone
Yeah.
do it and then copy it. It's a f- it, you because it comes off fake, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
when you see someone that actually like is able to control a room just by their what is it called when I'm having a brain fart here.
Their aura, their presence,
Yeah, when they're charismatic,
their charisma. Yeah.
but without being fake. They're not like a salesman. They're actually just, yeah, man. That was something I had to learn too. I had the same experience where I was just, for some reason, I was a jerk, and because I was like, oh,
Mhm.
I let that crow go to my head, like I'm like a pig amongst
Oh
guinea
yeah.
pigs here,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was something I by someone from the same, also charismatic. Did not grow up in the best environment, but still came out on top. And they pulled me aside, and pretty much, just gave me the ass chewing I needed. Just like, hey, you need to cut it out. You're a jerk, and there's why are you like
Hmm.
this? Put me in my place as needed. I was being a jerk, arrogant.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would definitely some of the best people, maybe because not necessarily because of the Navy itself, but what it causes you to have to do, which is live with your coworkers, which I don't feel like a
Yeah,
lot of people
yeah,
have to do that in the civilian world. And
yeah.
in close
That's
proximity,
something.
is you just meet the
Yeah,
best and the worst people, and yet there's
yeah,
always something you can take from that.
yeah, yeah. Oh man, this guy, he was a bit farther ahead than me. Like I always had so much conflict with him. He was kind of learning the same thing that I was learning, like how to be, um, how to live in the moment, how to not be so antagonistic. Um, like we had so much conflict, there was so much yelling, and then we had to share the same rack. Like,
Oh, I
like I
forgot.
would
Yeah,
get out of,
submarines, you hot rack.
yeah, yeah. So like I would get out and he'd get in. And it's like you hate this guy. Like I hated this guy so much. He hated me so much. And then we'd have to sleep in like the same spot. Like what? You never have to deal with that in the regular. Like imagine you go to work in the office space and that asshole who like I don't know slash your tire or like who's your girlfriend's cheating on with like imagine you have to sleep in the same bed as him like and now that guy didn't do either of those things but like I treated him like he did those things and he
Yeah.
treated me like I did those things. um yeah,
Yeah, hate can
this
run
other
deep on
guy.
a boat. It's crazy.
Oh yeah, yeah. This other guy. I he, pretty much everybody on the boat. I'm gonna say this like, out of every crewman that I ever worked with on the boat, there's only ever been one that like in hindsight, just don't have respect for. Like every single one, I admire and I miss them and I hope that they're doing well. There's just this one guy, and I'd have to share the rack with him too. Like uh, he threw away a promise ring that I had. Like I was being dumb. Probably shouldn't have brought this promise ring that I had with my ex. But like I had it and I was wearing it and like it was such this morale thing and he threw it away um and
He like
like I
he did it like viciously. He's like, I threw that away.
well he was this kind of he was like this with everyone like he was suffering, he wanted other people to suffer.
Oh, okay.
Like I confronted him about it. He was like, yeah, I threw it away. You left it out. Fuck you. Like, um, yeah, he was this guy. Like I had to share his rack. And like he would, I should have brought it up, but like he would do these things like, you know, he this is kind of gross, but like he would sometimes he pulled back my curtain when I was like trying to sleep, and he would like smell me, like he
What?
was this super aggressive. Yeah, like he was this aggressive guy, but he was just like so. He had these weird quirks. He'd do these weird things. He would like invade your privacy, or he'd like try to accuse you of something when you're trying to sleep. Like he would just be this like total creep. Like yeah, he would like he would like smell me, and I'd tell him to like buzz off, and he'd tell me he's like oh you suck, you don't have your fish yet, you're useless, I hate
Oh,
you.
that's hazing. That's straight up hazing.
Yeah, yeah. So like I hated that guy, and I had to share a rack with him. So like when you carry that into the workplace, like the office workplace, right? And you have like this guy who's maybe he's being kind of a jerk. It's like it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like whatever. Um, you go home at the end of the day. It's like it's not. He's not that other guy. Um. So
Yeah, I mean
yeah.
that sounds also like you could have like the best command or the best work, but there's always going to be that one
Yeah.
person. But it sounds like a lot of the
Yeah.
things you're talking about too is like maybe that command might have been going through some stuff at that time that it just
Yeah.
brings out the worst in people. And but the problem
Oh
is
yeah.
you can't, like you said, you can't escape it. You don't get to go home. Sometimes you just gotta
No, you have
sleep
to
next to the
just
person or eat next to them or work. Like there's no escaping it. And you're on a submarine, so there's
yeah.
definitely nowhere you could go.
There's nowhere you can go, and it's like you're there's no tapping out of the arena when when you're underway. You're just there, so you have
Yeah.
to. Yeah. So like you don't have some. I never felt like I had anybody to turn to, and I did. I just thought I didn't, and so that damaged me. Like I did a lot of damage. Um, a lot of people they on submarines they cope. We all have or pretty much everyone has their spit bottles. They chew
Yeah.
tobacco or whatever, and they I guess this is probably in the surface fleet too. They all there's alcohol. A lot of people are alcoholics. Um, like yeah, and like it's usually like the people who don't do that they turn into assholes. So like a lot of the people who didn't have like their vices or whatever, like they were just they're just jerks. They're just angry all the time. Um, So yeah, I never drank or smoked or did any of that. I didn't really cope, or I didn't really have an avenue for coping.
That I would
But
think right there is like a really important thing to like when people talk
yeah,
about like why do military members drink or smoke or dip so much, and it's like
yeah,
sadly I that's something I noticed too, and I'm trying to push on to people. Is you got to have positive things you could be doing to cope, like like a positive vice, if you will.
yeah,
So whether
yeah,
that's why sometimes you see people come back from deployments and they're just ripped. They're in the best shape, and that's because their
yeah,
coping was to go hit the gym.
yeah,
So sometimes they'd be like prison rules, and sometimes twice a day. It's crazy. For me, it was the same thing. I definitely hit the gym hard. That was one of my major
yeah.
coping. Um,
I
Definitely feel like I
I
took alcohol at
wish.
one point too far, like as a younger
Yeah,
sailor, and then I got smarter about it. But then yeah, that's something too where I don't mess with people if they're smoking or dipping or anything like that. I mean, I feel like
right, right.
they probably did it before they were in anyway. But
Yeah,
if I see someone going off the deep end, I try to like encourage something else, like maybe go to the gym. And for me, it was I got into art. There's got to be something you could
oh, that's
lose
awesome.
yourself in that is not
Yeah,
negative. It doesn't necessarily have to be even positive. Like I'm not,
yeah.
you know,
I Yeah, I love that. I love that. We had weights in the torpedo room, um, but like only there's like 150 people, and I guess maybe like 3 or 4 people could go down there at a time. And then our treadmill, we had a treadmill. For some reason, that treadmill was in the engine room, in a particular part of the engine room where there was always like oil dripping. So like if you ever stepped foot on
whoa,
that treadmill, you'd fall off. Um,
that's scary.
so yeah, yeah. So nobody ever went on that treadmill back there. I don't think it even worked. Um, yeah, I can't. When you go to the submarine force, like all the chiefs, I love them, but they're fat as fuck. You like something happens when you put on the khaki pounds, like it. Um,
The
yeah, so
freshman
like
15.
oh yeah, we call it the FSA 15 because when you join the boat, everybody goes through cranking where they do the
Oh
dishes.
yeah, dude, that same thing happened
Yeah,
to me. I got so fat was that because
you guys,
you
I
all the
gained.
access to the food. So as you're serving, you're
Yeah.
also eating, and then you also sit down and eat. You're like,
Oh yeah. The sub force has the best food ever. Like it's the
really?
best food. Yeah, that's because that's the one thing that they can give us. They're like, we can't give you like adequate gym supplies. We can't give you a place to relax. You can't go up, but we can give you the best fucking cake that you will ever have in your
Oh,
entire life. So I gained 50 pounds. In the 10 months that I was actually on the boat, I went from 150 to 200.
whoa, food must have been
Yeah,
real good then.
the food. Oh man, they had like mac and cheese, and they had like pizza every Friday, and yeah, the chefs were incredible. I loved the chef so much. One of them was an asshole, but he earned the right to be an asshole. The things that
Is
he
he a
would
good
do with
cook?
that lasagna. Oh my god, yeah. Um, so I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I can eat what I'm gonna eat this fucking cake. Fuck it. And yeah, I never, yeah, that's such a big problem with the Navy is like it is the fattest branch. Like,
I would
yeah,
I would agree with you on that, but I would say also it's because everyone says, "Oh, because you just need to increase the culture of fitness, culture of fitness." In reality, the culture of fitness is there. You have like your gym bros everywhere you go, and I feel like
Yeah.
every command I go to, maybe it's just because I'm not a gym bro, but I definitely do my best to stay in shape and make smart decisions. So I've never been like I never gained that much weight at one point, but I've
Yeah.
never really been either shredded either. But I've never failed any PFA or weigh in or anything like that.
That's good. That's good.
But there's it's the nature of the job. There's other than
Yeah.
you talk about like special forces like SEAL or SWIC or something like that, or CBs, where their job is to be physically active all day, and their life depends on it at that point. For
Yeah.
us, especially like technicians like you and me, it's we you sit the watch or you sit down and work. Like it's a lot of sitting. you know, there's not
Yeah.
really you have to actually people would make the argument. Sure, that's the whole point of going to the gym. It's doing that on top of your day. So even if you did have a physical day, it's
Right.
still going to the gym. That's how you get even more. That's getting in shape. Cutting out a section of time to study, cutting out a section of time to go to the gym. But
Right.
it's not necessary. It's not necessary at some level for a lot of the Navy. And I think it's that point
Yeah.
where you have to worry about, that's why they have PFAs to make sure people don't get lazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, it can be really difficult. Whenever I decide to
Oh
go on
yeah.
diets and we're on deployments, that cake starts to look pretty good, and man, do they put a lot of icing on that.
Oh, they do. It's like the best. It's like crack cocaine on the icing. I'm like, there's no way that I'm gonna pass a drug test after I eat this cake. It's so good. And like you don't have like dieting options. Like there's the entree, and that's it. And there's vegetables, right? But like vegetables are not gonna counter the fact that you get up, out of your rack and you sit down in a chair for like 8 hours on watch. I was lucky enough. I got to stand up. I had to stand at my watch station. If I sat down, hell, I'd probably just fall asleep.
Yeah, it can be
um,
difficult in CIC sometimes, especially with the low lights.
yeah, yeah. In the control, yeah, I was in the control room all the time, and like nobody ever like talks in the control room. Everything is super serious. It's just like the bridge of a surface ship. So like I was really lucky that I'd be able to stand, but I'd just be standing. You go home. I guess like home for me was the computer room, and you'd sit down, you do your quals, you just sit down, and then meanwhile, like every meal, you're eating like 1,500 calories. Like it's all got to go somewhere, right? So
Yeah.
just you inflate. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, there's definitely like you got to be really careful. I don't know if maybe you had less selections, but for being
yeah,
on a submarine, but there are
oh
times
yeah,
I'll
we did.
go
Yeah,
and I'll make a salad and I'll look at what the protein option is, and if it's a white meat, like chicken or
yeah, chicken.
or like pork, and then I'll put that on my salad.
Mm,
Like when I'm on a diet, it's like that's it. And so, you know,
yeah,
I would just pull a tray that has like 5 sections for different things, and it's filled
yeah,
with lettuce and some chicken.
yeah. When I was on my way out, I took some tours of some surface ships, and I got to eat lunch on a destroyer. I forget what the destroyer was, or what its name was. But like, yeah, I went to the galley, and I was like, it's a cafeteria. I'm like, this is amazing. The cafeteria, cruise mess. Um, it's the size of the living room that I'm sitting in right now, and like you pack like I think like 24 people like into the cruise mess. You eat as fast as you can, and then you get out.
Yeah, it's a rotation, definitely.
Yeah, it's like a rotation on a destroyer, man. It's like there's so much, and there's so many options you go through, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can get this and I can get that. Like
Hmm.
I was like, wow, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So I was just like,
it's you're kind of. I mean, so for the mess decks on a cruiser and destroyer, at the very least, I can say it's still the same. Yeah,
yeah,
it's larger. It's definitely larger, but it's still it can't fit the whole crew. You gotta just rotate people through
yeah,
same way. But
yeah,
that's kind of similar in the sense that, like, for your options, you had very few options. So
yeah,
you're gonna eat everything you can, and then so it could be difficult to make the right decision if there is no right decision. And then for larger ships, there's so many decisions. Sometimes it's the temptation.
Yeah, yeah. It's just so much. But yeah, so I always ask everyone that like, from the Navy, like, what made you want to join?
Oh yeah. So I was almost homeless for my own volition,
Oh,
actually.
okay, yeah,
And I was married at very young. I was married in very very young,
wow,
and my wife got pregnant like right after. It wasn't a shotgun wedding or anything, but it was she got pregnant right afterwards, and I was working at Walmart, and I was like, well, this ain't gonna do it. I was pretty much living in someone's backyard of a
oh my
very
gosh,
poorly built shed, and I was like, nope,
wow,
gotta do something better. And uh, my dad was in the military, and so I was like, that seems like something I could do. So joined the Navy, and I had the health care that I needed to take care of my wife and my new kid, and I had a paycheck so I can get move them out and get an apartment and start taking care of them. And, I went from
hmm
a whole lot of nothing to a whole lot of a lot. And I said before, I was well taken care of my parents and everything like that. Like I said, it was my own volition. I
yeah,
decided I wanted to marry this girl no matter what, at age 19, which is way too
oh
young.
yeah,
If I
that's
did, if I were to do
yeah,
it again, I would still marry her, but, just much later.
just much later.
Yeah,
I
way
feel
more
that, yeah,
established. Maybe finish college, or if still join the
yeah,
military, then save up some money. The reason
yeah,
why I stayed in, though, I would say so. I always said when I first joined, it was I got I got two worlds to take care of. I always wanted to serve, and then I also wanted to take care of the
hmm
world in which my family lives in, to make sure I provide for them and protect them. I
yeah,
stayed in just because I just started liking it. At first, it was terrible. Like I've had a very similar
oh
experience
yeah,
to you with people I didn't like. I worked with, and I didn't really have that great leadership that was approachable. And if I did approach him, I was yelled at for approaching him, even though I had like serious
oh
problems
yeah,
going on where I needed
yeah,
help. And the guy that was 2 years older than me, single, and going to the strip club every weekend wasn't the person I wanted helping me. So that was
yeah,
bad leadership. But then
bad
leadership
situation,
exchanged and the coworkers exchanged as they transferred, orders expired and got new people. And then I started to see there could be some good. And I was like, okay, yeah.
yeah,
And then we did an unrep. And we did an unrep with probably the largest unrepping ships I've seen. And compared to a cruiser, which is still 567 feet long and, as tall as like a 10-story building or so. It
oh
was
yeah,
much bigger
yeah,
than us, and we were rocking counter. So as we rocked to port, they were rocking to port. So we were looking up at the
hmm
sky, and you could see the top of them. And then when we rocked to starboard, they rocked to starboard, and we were looking down at the water, and you see this giant ship next to us, and it just kept on happening. I was like, "This? How do I explain to people that two buildings? If you took two, 30,
yeah,
40-story buildings, tipped them over, and then put
yeah,
them in the water, tell them they're going 15 knots and rocking
hmm
back and forth as we're transferring fuel, water, and, food. How do you explain that to
yeah,
someone, like the size? And I was like, this is cool. This is worth
just
it. I'll at least make chief. Let's see what happens from there.
yeah,
Why
that's
did
awesome.
why did you join?
I oh my gosh. So I joined during the COVID pandemic.
Hmm.
Um, I like there's an actual reason why I joined, and then there's like a spiritual reason why I joined. Spiritually, why I joined was like I wanted to get out there and be something. I was living in my parents' house. My parents were stuck in place at their vacation home in Arizona. I have very rich parents. I'm in Washington State in my house and not doing anything, and all I can do is I can watch Star Trek. And I was like, what? I want to do something. I want to be like Kirk. I don't know if you've ever seen Star Trek, but
Yeah,
like
Captain Kirk.
that's the Captain Kirk. I'm like I want to
Oh
be
no, I'm a
like
nerd too,
Captain
man. We're
Kirk.
both AECF. I'm a nerd.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like I want to do that. I'm like, what is the closest thing that I can do, to be like that guy? Um, and I was like, oh man, oh I know what it is. I look at the Navy. I'm like that's the closest thing, isn't it? That's 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 my
Not
ticket
the Air
in.
Force or
That's
anything.
how. No, because like the Air Force is like, and I'll get into this in a minute, but like the Air Force, it's like it's not like a ship. It's a plane. It's like a one seater, right? You don't get to be Captain Kirk on like a one seater fighter jet.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no bridge. There's no I grew up. I loved the sea. But yeah, and then so like I I looked at it and I was like, let's do it. And I was thinking, I was like, well, there's there's nothing closer to being in space than being underwater, right? So I was like, let's do the sub, let's do the sub force, let's do it. Better chance of getting a rate that I want because I don't want to end up as an ET. So I'm gonna make it 75%, 25%. You know, extremely unlikely that I'll end up as an ET, get more pay, rank up faster. Like I'll go for the sub force. So that's the spiritual reason. The real reason why I joined the Navy was because of my crazy, psycho, abusive ex-girlfriend,
Oh, jeez.
who tried to run me over, literally tried to run me over while intoxicated, and I had to call the police on her, and she knew where I lived, and I had nowhere to go, and I needed to get the fuck out of there. Um, so
That's an alternate way of like. Usually, you hear those crazy stories like it was either this or prison, and for you, it was either this or my
yeah,
crazy ex girlfriend was.
yeah, and I'm like, and my line of thinking is like, there's no way that she'll ever find me. Like the safest place, the farthest away place that I can be from this person is on a submarine in the middle of the ocean, completely underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I I joined, and I wanted I probably would have joined sooner. Like I'd always wanted to do something like Star Trek related, kind of. But growing up, I had an okay living situation growing up. None of my parents were physically abusive. My mom was great, um, and it was a split living situation. So there's all of that attached. And then my dad, I love him very much, but he was one of those dads that was like I need to be needed. I need to be needed, and my son is an excellent medium for me to feel fulfilled. So I'm gonna make sure that my son always needs me. So what he did, like growing up, I'm getting somewhere with this, but like what he did when I was growing up was like he would always be taking me to these like mental institutions, having me looked at by psychiatrists. He was always trying to find something wrong with me mentally. So like. Um, he convinced the elementary school that I was at that I had like Asperger's, autism. Like he basically threw the book at them. He's like, yeah, my son has these problems. He has these disabilities. And like
He was like
in
making them up,
hindsight,
or not to be like intrusive, but was
he would just tell them. He would tell them like he wouldn't accept the psychiatrist saying that that I didn't have anything, like because he felt the need
yeah.
to be needed. So he'd be like, oh yeah, no, the doctors are wrong, the psychiatrists are wrong. My son just has these problems, and he needs extra help. Blah blah blah. So like I grew up, like thinking that I had all these problems, right? And he was always looking for something wrong with me. And so like
That's scary.
elementary school, yeah. So like elementary school happens, right? And this is like kind of one of the defining moments of my life. We were at a restaurant, and I'm eating a cheeseburger, and I choke ever so slightly on the cheeseburger, right? And like I have this little panic attack. I'm like, oh my god, I just choked on a cheeseburger,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And my dad was like, oh, something's wrong with my son. Like something's wrong with him. I'm twitching a little bit, like I'm a little bit scared, but like my dad's like, oh, something's wrong with my son. We need to go to the ER. We need to figure out what's wrong with him. So I'm freaking out because I'm thinking that something is horribly wrong with me, and my dad's like trying to think that there's something horribly wrong with me. So we go to the ER, and I'm like 9 or 10, and I'm just freaking out. I just have this huge panic attack. I'm scared out of my mind, and so like the doctor looks at me and he's like, your son's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. He just needs to choose food better. Like, and so I'm like, okay. I walk out of there. My dad walks out of there, and now I can't eat food because every time I eat food, I'm freaking out because I think that I'm gonna choke, right? And so it starts this years long spiral of like I'm afraid to do everything because if I do something, something's gonna happen. Like if
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
if I
that fear.
swallow food, yeah, if I swallow food, I'm gonna choke. And it evolved into if I go on a plane, the plane's gonna crash. If I do XYZ is gonna happen.
Ooh.
Yeah, so like high school, I weigh 90 pounds. I'm 5'10". I weigh 90 pounds. Like just actual things start happening.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so I'm constantly afraid. And then like I have all this emotional baggage. So like when we fast forward to like joining the Navy, like I thought that all of these fears were gone, right? Because I had been working in a factory. I gone to college. I got wrapped up with like Antifa. Like I used to be part of that organization, and I just had all the wrong ideas, and basically converted that fear into anger. And so like I thought that being so angry at the country and at the world and at like um, people that I didn't agree with politically, I thought that the fear had just gone away, but I really just repressed it. So joining the Navy, right? Like going through boot camp and then going to the sub force, like everything came back.
Oh. What was that
Yeah.
like being it? So Antifa was like pre-military.
Yeah, so like pre-military, I was going, this was, George Floyd, the riots, like I was down in the riots,
Whoa.
like I was like anti-police, I was anti, I'm sorry, I'm going off on my own tangent, but like it's part of like why I joined was I wanted to get away from it all. But like that's what I did, and like I was so afraid, and being part of this this cult, right? Like it you feel good when you feel angry. You're able to point your fear at something,
Yeah.
and you're so angry at it. I thought that like that the fear was gone. So it came back when I went to boot camp. Um, I was freaking out, and I was like I have this anxiety, and then it's like I don't want to give up. I don't want to give up. I'm here. I want to get rid of it. I want to let go of the past. I I want to be a part of something bigger. Like how can I be like I know this is gonna sound silly, but like how can I be Captain Kirk if I'm carrying this baggage with me,
Yeah.
right?
No, that doesn't sound silly.
Um, yeah, so like I was going through boot camp, and all the time, like I'm shaking, I'm panicking, and like the RDCs and the petty officers, they pull me aside. They're like, What is wrong with you? Why are you shaking? Why are you shaking?" And I'm like, "I'm not shaking. You are, petty officer." I didn't say it like that. I kept my bearing, but like, I never fessed up. Like, oh, I have anxiety. Like, I'm having these panic attacks. I'm afraid. And I remember like this one time, like I'm in boot camp, and I'm doing the security watch, and I have to go down to the quarter deck to make my reports, and like I'm in line, and you have like three seaman recruits up ahead of me, and they're all fine, and then there's me, and I'm like the fourth person, and I don't want to get yelled at, so I'm shaking, I'm shaking, standing at attention, shaking at attention, and like this blue rope, he comes up to me, and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing, petty officer." And he's a chief. He's like, "I'm a chief." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, chief." Um, and he's like, "Why are you shaking like that?" And he's like, "I've never seen someone shake like that." And I'm like, "I don't want to shake anymore." He's like, "Stop shaking." And I'm like, yes, petty officer. And he's like, I'm a chief.
That
And
I think it's so funny. Sorry to interrupt, but do you want
yeah,
to see a chief yell? The best way you see a chief yell is go to RTC and call a chief a petty officer. It's like
yeah,
no matter who they are, I don't care who you are, but it's maybe the first or second time they're like they just got stationed there, right? And they're just like, oh, I'm a
yeah,
chief, man. Hey, I'm a chief. And then after like the thousandth time a recruit calls you a petty officer when you're a chief, you just watch a chief
yeah.
lose it. It's
Lose
wild.
it, lose it. Yeah, I made that mistake during battle stations. There was this female chief. She had been a petty officer for 17 years, and she was just so fucking fed up with being labeled a petty officer, I guess. And so I called her a petty officer during the like. Oh, I can't talk about it, but I called her a petty officer. She's like, "I'm a chief." I was just like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, yeah.
And
So
it was
like,
always funny to me whenever that happened. 'Cause I wasn't a chief while I was at RTC, but
mhm.
so I guess I could explain from personal experience, but from observation view, to me, I always laughed a little bit inside. It's just the funniest thing to me.
Yeah. No, that's what they say. RTC is the funniest place that you're not allowed to laugh at.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
From
yeah.
either
So
side.
like yeah. So after that encounter with the chief, like I stopped shaking. Like I was like, I don't want to shake anymore. I'm gonna do my best to stop shaking. And like, um, I learned this was I was so fortunate. Like recalibration was starting to get introduced. So like,
Yeah.
you recalibrate. Yeah, I was able to do that, and yeah, and so like I got through boot camp. I I loved boot camp. I learned a lot. I had a really good first RDC. I don't know if you knew EM1 Harris.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, best guy ever. Uh, he he one of my favorite things that I heard him say, like, um, I was the laundry PO, and I believe me when I tell you I was the worst laundry PO
They all
like
are.
ever.
They all are.
I so like I during P days, during P days, me and my buddies, we called it the Pearl Harbor incident. Um, I like I go into boot camp, right? I'm freaked out, and I'm like I'm gonna hide my fear by like trying to take on extra responsibility and like acting confident, and like the best way to do that in my mind was like, oh, the best way to do that is to become the RPOC, right? Like I'm gonna combat this fear by being a badass, so I'm gonna become the RPOC. So like the second that like Harris, he's like, all right, I need somebody with leadership experience. My hand shoots up, and I'm like, I'm your guy, petty officer. And I get yelled at for saying that, and he's like, you're gonna be the laundry PO, and I'm like, fuck.
That
In
didn't
my
turn
mind,
out.
I'm like, fuck, that didn't turn out good. So I'm like, I think this is like the day after night of arrival, right? And um, you get night of arrival happens, and you have your PTQs, and like everybody's sweaty and freaked out, and like you get skid marks. Some recruits they shit themselves. Like it's a bad first laundry load,
Yeah.
right? And so the second that I'm like shown the ropes on how to run laundry, how to do the laundry and stuff, um, I'm like, let's do the laundry, right? We're wearing our fresh PTs. I'm like, let's do the laundry, and I thought that by being the laundry PO, you were just responsible for getting the laundry done. There
Oh
wasn't a
no.
procedure to it.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
so I don't know how he didn't catch me, but like I don't know how Cook or Harris didn't catch me, but like I grab my buddy Desjardins in my right arm, and I take my left arm and I grab my other buddy Marsh, and I'm like, let's do the fucking laundry. I'm like, let's do this
Like
shit.
a mission.
So we're on a mission. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking kick ass here. I'm gonna be the best damn laundry PO ever. So I grab the bags, right? and I fucking leave. We just leave the squad bay. I don't ask for permission. I get the fuck out. Me, Marsh, and Desjardins, and we go down. And the laundry rooms are like they're throughout the building. They're not attached to the room.
Not in
They're all
Pearl Harbor. Yeah.
not in
The
Pearl
other
Harbor.
places they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are. Yeah, but yeah, not in Pearl Harbor. They're on different floors. So like we have our nasty fucking disgusting PTs. We go to the first laundry room. There's a sign on sheet. We don't see the sign on sheet. We just load the damn thing. We just load it up. We start it, and we're like, wow, this is so easy. This is the easiest thing in the world. We start it, and then we go to like the next floor and we load the next the next washing machine full of laundry, and we go to the next floor and we fill it up. And we're like, there's no like contingency plans. There's no logic. We don't remember where we went to get the laundry. We just kind of shove it in, right? So we're just like we're on top of the world. We're like we're the best fucking recruits. We're the best recruits in Division 378. We're fucking amazing. Look at us. We come back. We come back to the room, and it's gone. Nobody's there. Nobody's fucking there. It's just us three, and I'm like, oh shit. Like where the fuck did everyone go? And I hear this like footsteps behind me. We turn around, and it's Petty Officer Cook. He's got the thickest Southern accent I've ever fucking heard. He's like, "What in the Sam hell are you fucks doing here when the rest of the division's out eating chow?"
You're like laundry.
And I'm like, Petty Officer, we're doing the laundry. He's like, did I fucking say that you could go do the laundry, seaman recruit? And I'm like, no, Petty Officer, but I'm the laundry PO. He's like, did I fucking say, listen here, you're gonna go down to the laundry room right now, right the hell now, and you're gonna get every single piece of laundry, you're gonna get right back in here, right the hell now. And I'm like, yes, Petty Officer. So me, Marsh, and Desjardins, we go. Let me tell you about Marsh and Desjardins. Desjardins is what happens when you take Daniel Radcliffe and you have him procreate with a nuclear reactor. He's this like spazzy, like twice as spazzy as I am. He has these glasses. He's a nuke. So he's freaking out. He's like, oh my god, we're freaking out. Oh my god. And then you have Marsh, who's like, he's a brick, like physically. I love him to death, but like, mentally a brick. So he's like, let's do it. We're fucked. Let's do it. So we get to the first laundry room, right? We open up the washing machine, and we're so bad. This didn't belong to our division, right? The laundry that we're fishing out of the washing machine does not belong to our division. So we're thinking it's our division, so we're pulling it out, and it's submerged, right? Like this laundry is submerged in recruit shit water, and we're just pulling it out because we didn't realize that there was a button you could press that could like drain the washing machine. So we just pull it out. We just pull it all out, and like with our bare hands. And like immediately the bag is too heavy for us to lift, so we're dragging it down the P-ways, like, and it's like leaving like a little stream, right? Yeah. And so like we go, that's the first bag, and then all three of our bags we grab them, and like I don't know how we didn't get seen by like another division, but like it's just a trail through Pearl Harbor of like shit water. And we get back to the squad bay, and Petty Officer Cook, he looks at his, and like we're miserable, like we're covered in this stuff, like our yellow shirts are brown shirts now. He looks at us, I remember this, he says y'all look like you lost the battle. He said that. I was like, no, Petty Officer, we got the laundry back, we got it. And like in my mind, I'm like, we lost the battle, but hell, we won the war. We got it back. And so we had to swab. We spent the we spent the days like we went through the meal hour, or we went through chow. Like instead of eating chow, we had to like swab. Um, it was yeah, it was bad. Um, I I didn't get fired.
Really? I would
I
have
didn't.
fired you.
Yeah, no, I totally deserved to get fucking fired. No, I didn't get fired. Marsh got fired. Um, I guess I don't know. I guess they thought that maybe he was the mastermind. Marsh got fired. But like, I did get fired. Because like I snuck after taps. I snuck the PT uniforms into the washing machine after taps, and like fell asleep like before I went to security to the roving security watch. I was like, hey, can you wake me up in 30 minutes so I can transfer the dirty clothes from the washer to the dryer, right? And he's like, oh yeah, I got you. So I go to sleep, and I wake up to reveille, right? And like our third RDC, he's like, what the fuck is happening in here? And I have to explain hey, oh yeah, no, I sent the clothes through the washer. I didn't transfer it into the dryer, and because I was so good as a laundry PO, right? We didn't have PTs. We didn't have PT uniforms good to go to do PT. So we had to send these moldy, gross PT uniforms from the washer to the dryer, and then go to chow. We come back from chow. We get dressed. We go to the gym, or we go to Freedom Hall, and there's just this rancid, moldy, horrible smell.
No, you guys had to wear it.
Yeah, we had to wear it,
Oh.
and like all the time, people were like, oh God, it's the laundry, and I'm like, it's not the laundry. It's not the laundry. It's all in your head. I'm a good laundry PO. I'm a good laundry PO, and I Harris beats the division because he's so fed up with our shit, right? Harris beats the division because like we embarrassed him because we smell fucking horrible. Like we smell like a fucking latrine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then like taps happens again. Um, I get sent to the fishbowl. They're like train your relief, train your fucking relief. You suck. Go train your fucking relief. I'm like, yes, petty officer. And taps happens. I get beat by the division, not physically, but they make me do push-ups after the lights go out.
Whoa.
Yeah, yeah,
I've never heard of that one.
like
The division IT shit.
yeah. Oh yeah, the division. Yeah, no, there's a lot of things that happen when you guys leave. Yeah, we use the drawing room as a fight club.
What? That's a new
Yeah,
one.
sometimes. Yeah, I mean, like you weren't allowed to like punch people in the face, but like when you get so fed up with another recruit, right? You go into the drawing room after taps, and you'd wrestle, you push things around. Um, yeah, no, the things that we get away with. Um, yeah. But anyways, yeah. So like I get fired. I, like I put up this like sob story. I go to Harris. I'm like, hey man, like I miss being the laundry PO. I felt like that was my part in the division. Um, and I said part of being a submariner, because he was a submariner. He's like part of being a submariner is like you gotta go the extra mile, and that's what I felt like I was doing as a laundry PO, and I miss it. And
Appeal to
he
his
said
better
to me,
nature, huh?
yeah, yeah, and he said to me, I love what he said. He said Esquivel Palude, that's my last name. He's like seaman recruit, just be a seaman recruit. I was like, well, he's like, just be a seaman recruit. Stop trying to be all these things. Stop being a seaman recruit. Or he's like, just be a seaman recruit. Stop trying to be the laundry PO. I was like, yes, petty officer. And like that, that helped me feel a lot better. Like not having to, try to be all these things. Just try to be a seaman recruit and learn my skills. And Yeah, I felt good. Now, since I was the worst laundry PO ever, I'm also terrible at picking a relief and training my relief. So my relief gets caught with dirty recruit clothes in his rack, and so he gets fired. And Harris, like this is like right when we're about to leave, Harris makes me the laundry PO again, and like I get bumps to E2 for being the laundry PO.
It all came back around.
Um, it all came back around.
Wait, no,
Yeah.
you're
So
AECF. You should be automatically E2 upon graduation of boot camp.
yeah. So I was SECF, and it's a different pipeline. SECF, you don't even make E4 when you graduate A school.
Oh, it's not automatic time and rate.
Yeah, yeah. It's completely different. I was I got fooled by the recruiter into thinking that I'd be E4 once I graduated A school. But
Those
yeah, so
recruiters.
I got yeah. Yeah, so no, I loved boot camp. Like it helped me get control of my fear, um, sort of, but like I felt really good. And then like A school happened, and man, I don't know if A school is the same for you, but like A school does not prepare you for the fleet. At least for me, it didn't. Was it like that for you?
So, I agree with you. It's, I would say there are things. What's the best way to describe it, right? I agree
Yeah,
with you. Yeah, I don't think anything ever prepares you for the fleet. Like, there isn't a school to prepare you for the fleet, which to anyone listening to this that's never been in the Navy before, never really thought of, like, it's a real thing, you know. It's like it's you could sit there and train to shoot a rifle, but that doesn't train you to be in war, you know. So the same thing, like
yeah,
you
right.
go to boot camp to learn how to be a sailor, and then you go to your school to learn how to be whatever your rate's gonna be, and then they just put you on a ship, and you're like, what is this?
Yeah,
It's not like
yeah.
it's a building and you're like, okay, well, it's different than a building. What's the big deal? It's the environment. It's so wild. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the fleet, and like there's because it's so weird too, because I don't know, how would you even train for that. There's just so many things
Yeah,
that happen that are only in the fleet, and things that you have to be
yeah.
aware of and learn about that only happen in the fleet. But I feel like it's also one of those things where you can't train it because you have to experience it. So there's
Right.
nothing that really buffers it, and it's different from person to person, but it's definitely agreed upon, I would say, by everyone that fleet life is different than just going to school or even being
It's
an instructor.
totally different.
Like, I totally forgot I was a, what my rate was when I was an RDC. It's because you just don't do that. You do RDC stuff. So all you think about is like the first step. And you don't think about the fact that you're actually 50 steps in your career and kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah. So like, yeah, I feel that on like so many levels. So for me, right, I still have like even after boot camp, like I'm still afraid of flying. Right, I still have that fear of flying. We get sent into on a military, passenger jet. We get sent to Connecticut, and you know those pilots, those military pilots. They are like they don't give a fuck. They get in a plane. That plane, they are just gonna go way above the plane speed limit if there is one, and go super high, and do the tricks and fly around. And so I'm in the back, and we're all in uniform, and I'm like, oh my god, my my buddy, my buddy from boot camp, Griffith. He's so sweet. He like holds my hand while I'm like freaking out on this jet. Um,
That's shit, man, right
and
there.
it's yeah, he's like best shipmate ever. I love him to death. Um, we land, and I'm like I can't handle a plane. How the hell am I going to handle a submarine? Like what the hell am I going to do? So I'm going through the motions of A school, and um, submarine A school is so easy. You have a 6 day duty rotation, and submarine school is like so easy. You sit in a classroom, it's air conditioned, nobody's yelling at you. You have these powerpoints, Everybody's so chill. All of the instructors are so nice. Um, I wanted to do I wanted to do silver dolphins. That's like the rifle club, and like that's the hardest thing that I did was learning how to like flip a rifle, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so like I'm going through it, and it's so easy, and it's like in my mind there's like this doomsday clock, like, oh, one of these days you're gonna go to a submarine. You're gonna go to the submarine. You're gonna be underwater. It's super dangerous.
Yeah.
It's super dangerous. It's so easy. It's coming for you. It's coming for you. Um,
So you had a feeling of like dread? Because I got a feeling of excitement. I
yeah,
was like, oh, I can't wait to be eighth
yeah,
grade underway. I'm so stoked for this.
yeah. No, for me it was dread. For me it was like I only have so many months before I'm on a submarine. I don't know how I'm gonna handle it.
That's
Right?
wild.
I don't. Yeah, like I'm like, bro. So I'm like hiding myself behind my military bearing, like trying to do all these things. You know, I was the assistant class leader in A school. I was Silver Dolphins. I was the assistant section leader. Like, people put me in charge of like the instructors would put me in charge of like 150 fellow recruits for like the duty days. Like, I was the go-to for like uniform inspections. I was 22 at the time. I'm 25 now, but I was 22 at the time. So everybody else was like 18. I was kind of seen as like big brother. So like, I was like smile and wave. Um, yeah, but like in my head, there's like gunfire going off in my head. I'm like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And my instructor did not help because like he would talk to us about tapping. He's like, yeah, when you tap, you get a dishonorable discharge. You're gonna have a hard time working at McDonald's. You're in the
Ah,
Navy, man. You're in the
yeah.
Navy. There's no way out. Like, I'm like,
What
fuck.
terrible things to say.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, fuck. I have to do this. I have to do this. Um, and I'm like, shit. Um, and we, I, in my head, I think that every A school, whatever rate you have, you should spend at least like one um, underway. If it's like a short underway, like you should do what the midshipmen do. There should be at least like a small amount of time where you actually go out to sea or you actually do something in your job and you get some experience under your belt before you graduate. I think that that would be great, and
They're
that would have really helped me.
they're actually starting to field test that with some of the rates, where
Yeah,
they'll have them go to they'll have them get their NEC, right. So like say for example,
yeah,
FCs, right? They go to ATT and then they go to A school.
Mhm.
But then after they're supposed to go to a C school to get this because once they get rated FC, they're considered what's called quad ball, so they have 0000 instead of like an actual
yeah,
NEC designated. So what
Mhm.
they're doing is they're sending them out to sea for a year of what they're going to be, and they work in the work center that they're going to be working on, and then they'll come back and then they finish their schooling and then they go back to the ship again. So it's supposed to be
yeah,
like get them quicker and then get them some learning, so that when they go to school they get more of like instead of it fundamentals, it's more of like a um, you get more in depth. But yeah, there's a thing they're fielding it right now for some of the rates and not the entirety of the rate. They're like selecting like one or two from the class to do it, kind of a thing.
yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that that's really great because it gives seamen their confidence. They're like, okay, when they get to the fleet, they're like, I know how to do my job because I've done it already.
Yeah.
Um, that would have really helped me because like if I go to the boat, right, and I go out on an underway during my training and we're out at sea and I just freak out, like I just have a complete panic attack. Then they see like, oh, this guy doesn't have it. He's not qualified. Like he can't do this. Let's give him something else. Let's give him a second chance or something. Like it gives them the opportunity, right? Because I was under the wrong impression and I was too afraid to speak up. Um, or I could have gone out to sea and realized that, oh, I'm fine. This is fine. This is actually pretty great. Like I can totally do this, and I would have come back, and the doomsday clock would have gone away. Um, yeah, and like yeah, and that eventually happened. Like um, I graduate A school. I had the worst flight of my life going back from Connecticut to Chicago, like on the way back to my home state, Washington State. They put me on this tiny ass little plane, and the plane is like, yeah, I'm just not gonna fly smoothly, but, shake like this is a roller coaster, and so I got all the fear, freaked out of me, and I was good to go for the fleet. I get to the fleet, and the submarine like is in dry dock, so the doomsday clock is like, oh yeah, I'm gonna add 6 more months until sea trials, right? So there's the doomsday clock is clicking for like 6 more months, and then 6 months turns into 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh shit, we're actually gonna do sea trials. I'm actually gonna go out to sea, and uh, man, everybody was making these jokes like, "Oh, we're gonna die. We're all
Oh,
gonna
that's
die."
terrible.
Yeah, like these all these nukes, right? They're like, "Oh man, the reactor's gonna quit at 500 feet. We're gonna die. Like, we're all fucked." They took a picture of us underneath the bow dome, or underneath like the bow of the sonar dome, and then like we had this picture of all the crew, and like people were joking like, oh man, they're gonna have this picture at our funerals. This is gonna be like
No,
the
that's
picture in the
so
news.
terrible.
Yeah, so I'm like fighting fires in my head. I'm like, fuck. Like, what the fuck do I do? Like, do I tap and ruin my life, or do I do this? Um, so I'm like, I'm gonna go to chief, right? I'm gonna go to chief. I'm like, chief. The Indonesian submarine, like the Nanggala, sank with all hands during sea trials. That the Thresher sank with all hands during sea trials in the '60s. I'm scared of shit. I'm freaked out. And the chief was like, I'm expecting like the chief to be like, oh, you got this, seaman. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be fine. And the chief is like, yeah, I don't blame you.
What? Yeah.
And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, no, I don't blame you. I can't say certain things because I'm a chief and I don't want to sacrifice the morale of the crew. But I'm being honest. I do not feel good about this underway.
Oh no.
I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, fuck. So I'm like looking for someone. Everybody that I go to, I'm like, bro, I don't know if I can do this. They're like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna fucking die. We're gonna die. I said goodbye to my girlfriend. We're gonna fucking die. I'm like, shit. I'm like, shit. So I'm thinking, I'm like, how do I get out of this? And in my brain, I'm just like, you know what? Let's do it. I wouldn't be me if I didn't. I've been fighting my fears all my life. I I I wouldn't be myself. We're not gonna die. Let's go.
Yeah.
Um, so we go out on sea trials, and uh, what do you have it? We almost die. Like, something happens. We almost slam into the bottom. We all almost die. Something breaks. I'm just like, I'm freaking out. But like, I managed to combat this fear of like, oh, we're gonna die. We're gonna die. Well, I gotta get quals done. So while we're fighting casualties, or while shit's hitting the fan, I'm like I'm like I gotta get these signatures done. I gotta learn how things work.
Yeah.
And so like I came back, and I'm just like, I'm listening to DJ Khaled on the drive back from the base. I'm like, all I do is win, 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 no matter. Like, I'm listening to that, and like it goes. That was my first underway.
I think that's also something like people don't understand, especially like submariners, man. Like, y'all are crazy,
Yeah,
because that could be a thing
we're
where
nuts.
nothing could be wrong, but then something randomly could happen wrong, and you're
Oh yeah,
underwater and you can't resurface. Like,
yeah.
that's scary. Like, it's a risk, you know.
There's yeah. So there's this weird dichotomy. I don't know if it's the right word. It's this paradox. Submarines, so dangerous. Like, we are humans. We have no business being like hundreds and hundreds of feet
Yeah.
below the ocean. We have no business doing that. We have no business being in an enclosed space that we can't get out of. We have no business like launching torpedoes, dodging torpedoes, combating flooding. We are just not a waterborne species.
Yeah.
And so you go on that submarine and something goes wrong and you can't fix it. That's 150 people that are just fucked
Yep.
and are dead. The World War II, 1/4 of submarines went down with all hands. Like a full 1 in 4 people. And there was a time during that period where it was like 1 in 2. Like if you were a submariner in the United States Navy and it was like the early 1940s, so like 41, 42, like there's a 1 in 2 chance, like literal coin flip. Are you going to go home alive or are you going to die on a submarine, right? So there's that half of the coin where it's like so dangerous. But then there's the other half where you're obviously completely safe and it's completely fine because your crew that you depend on are so competent and so good at their jobs that, like, you know, the technology is so advanced, they have so much experience, like you're fine, you're totally fine, but it's so dangerous, but you're fine, like.
Yeah, no, it's still scary though, which is why whenever
so scary, yeah.
I try to strike up a conversation whenever I bump into someone who is a submariner or used to be in submarines, kind of things like, tell me about how you deal with stress, because that's insane.
Yeah, my coping mechanism was just constantly telling myself, you're gonna get through this. You're gonna live. This is fine. This is fine. Like, sometimes I would literally lie to myself. Oh, we're not about to hit an iceberg. Oh, this isn't actually broken. This is just a dream. You're gonna wake up from this and this is gonna be fine. Like, I would just kind of tell myself, during ISEX, we didn't do it right. We didn't surface through the ice properly, and we didn't detect until it was too late an iceberg that we were surfacing into. And so, like, I'm in the control room, right? My job is to man the fathometer, make sure we're not going to hit the bottom or the top. So I'm on watch, and everybody forward of me. So like the diving officer, helmsman, plainsman, officer of the deck. All of a sudden, during this surfacing maneuver, all of a sudden they're like, "Abort! Abort! 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 Abort!" They're shouting like they're trying to get out because sonar detects an iceberg above us that we didn't see before, and we're about to slam into it from beneath.
Jeez.
And so like I'm sitting here at the fathometer, like I'm holding onto it like a cat, like holding onto, like, I don't know, a piece of wood, like a cat out of water. Like, I'm just so freaked out, and I'm just telling myself, I'm like, this is not happening. We're not doing this. This isn't happening. This is fine. Everything is fine. And then we hit the iceberg. We hit it in a way where, like, we're not damaged, but like we do hit it. And so, like, the whole world, right? Submarine, like, it's your whole world. It's just an earthquake. It's just, and
like everything's rattling and stuff.
Everything is rattling. Yeah. So it's like hitting something. Like, because like we hit the iceberg. So there's just this crashing noise, loudest noise I ever heard. We slam and like we go through the iceberg and we surface on the other side, and like the rate, like the damage that we did suffer, like, it wasn't to the hull, but it was the radar. Like the radar was just fucked. And like we get through it, but like that was during I6. That was when I was just like so, I was just like totally freaked out, and that was like my coping mechanism. And then there was like a time where we couldn't replenish our oxygen. Like, enough equipment was breaking that we weren't able to monitor our atmosphere or like recirculate. So like we had to go to sleep like as soon as we went off watch. Like, if you weren't on watch, you had to go to sleep so that you would consume less oxygen because we didn't have oxygen to replace. So like I'd hit my rack and for like a few days because we couldn't surface through the ice to just replenish. For a few days, I'm like, man, am I gonna wake up?
Oh,
Like, yeah,
like in a real way. That's scary.
in a real way. Like, I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm not gonna be able to breathe. And not being able to breathe was the very first panic attack that I ever had, all the way back at that restaurant with that burger. So I'm like, I'm not gonna be able to breathe. Um, Definitely did some damage to my psyche. Um, but yeah, so like even with the coping mechanisms, like the anxiety was like too much. And I was just having like a breakdown in the control room, and like I eventually was just like, my ANAV, he comes up to me. He pulls me aside. He's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? And I was like, I'm scared. On my ANAV, I'm scared out of my mind. I know that we're safe. I feel that, like, I feel in my mind that we're safe, but I'm so scared. Like, I'm so unbelievably scared. I have no idea how we're gonna go home. And he finally tells me, he's like, E15, because that was my nickname. He's like, E15, we're fine. We're fine. This is what happens when you're in the subforce. Shit happens. You're gonna be okay. You want to talk to the doc? I'm like, yeah, I want to talk to the doc. So he'd send me down to the doc. I explained to the doc. Like I'm so afraid at this point. Like I'm thinking suicide. Like I'm thinking suicidal thoughts. I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking like, what's the easiest way out? What's the less terrifying way out? I'm like, oh, I'll just kill myself. I don't know how. You're on a submarine. Like how am I just gonna randomly kill myself? I don't know. But I'm thinking like, oh, maybe I just like fall off a ladder and break my neck or something. Like I'm having these like horrible thoughts. I know this is really dark and serious, but so I confess I'm having these thoughts. I go to the doc, and the doc is like, I don't know if it's the same on the surface fleet, but in the subforce you have independent duty corpsmen.
Yeah, we have corpsmen that are assigned to our ships.
Yeah, so like we have one guy who takes care of like all the crew. He's an enlisted guy, and this chief, he was a green chief. Like he worked with like
Marine
Marines,
Corps,
special
yeah,
forces.
FMF.
Yeah, he served in like Haiti and like all these different war zones. So like he talked to me about his anxiety and like his fear, and then like he told me he's like you need to just talk about this with other people. You need to talk about what you're dealing with to other people. You need to just not be so closed. He told me that, and then he told me he's like I think you're still submarine material. I could give you some medication. I can give you some medication, and we can send you back. Like you can stay with us. If you want, we can have you talk to Squadron. And so I was like, I want to talk to Squadron. I want to get Squadron's opinion on this. And so he was like, yeah. So we were underway. My favorite thing ever, my favorite story ever in my experience in the Navy, was right after ISX. Like we get back from the Arctic, and the captain, he wants to go to the Naval Academy, because at the Naval Academy there's like this annual submarine ball, like where all the submarine captains that are available, they show up, and they do their dance. They do this like captain's ceremony dance thing, right? And so we had to go up the Chesapeake. We had to anchor up the Chesapeake, outside of Annapolis. Our captain, I don't think he was the best captain.
Well, they just
I don't
say
think
that.
he had. I don't think he had a very good understanding of the crew. He was very reclusive. He never really talked to us.
Ah, that's a shame.
Yeah, and so like after like a 6-month deployment, or I guess to us it was more like 2 or 3. It was a short deployment, but like after a deployment, might not be the best idea to infuse your like exhausted, tired out, irritated crew with like midshipmen.
Yeah, that's always
It-
like a hit or miss when it comes to that stuff because you either get that
yeah,
midshipman that just wants to sit on their phone and then like try. It's like you should salute me. And it's like, are you serious, man? Like, get
yeah,
out of here. And then
yeah,
sometimes you get those ones that are just like, oh, what is this? What is that? And, like just pure interest and joy. And like that, I'll be around that all day. Like some
oh yeah,
people, that's great. So it's sadly it's hit or miss when it
yeah,
comes to that.
yeah. So like, I totally get that. Yeah, we had some midshipmen like that. Let me tell you though. So like, on one hand, we have a crew that's like tired and angry and irritated and like stressed out, right? Hasn't seen land, hasn't seen the light of day, or they've seen the light of day because we surfaced through the ice. Um, hasn't seen land. Totally pissed off, totally ready to go home. Literally like days before we pull into port, the captain's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to Annapolis." Um, so we're going up the Chesapeake now. Oh, it's not only the crew that's pissed off; it's also the submarine itself. Like the subread itself has just been like if she were like a person, she'd be like, man, they sent me. I didn't have enough oxygen. They sent me through an iceberg. My radar's broken. Everything's fucking broken. I just want to go the fuck home. And this asshole captain is taking me to the submarine ball. So we also have environmental restrictions, and we can't unload all of our shit at the North Pole. We can't do that. That's gonna that's gonna piss off the EPA.
Yeah, like literal
So
shit.
we have to literal shit. Yeah. So we're going up the Chesapeake Bay towards Annapolis. We have like months of shit that we need to blow overboard, and so we're stressed out. We need to get the submarine ready to go for the midshipmen, right? We got to get this. We got to get this thing on the road. We start to cut corners on how we do things. You blow sands overboard, right? We're on the surface, so there's a hatch. There's an open hatch from the sail down to the submarine.
Hmm.
So like we're all getting ready to smell it, right? We're doing things as quickly as possible to blow sands overboard on the surface, and I'm at the fathometer, right? Because I'm part of the piloting party. I make sure that we don't hit the bottom of the Chesapeake and end up in the news. Um, and I'm sitting at I'm standing at the fathometer, and the chief of the watch, he's like machinery room, prepare to blow sands overboard. Or he says something like that. And what we hear whoosh, ka-thunk, and silence. And like the chief of the watch is trying to get a hold of the machinery room. He's like machinery room. What's going on? Report. Hey you, it's me. Report? What's going on?
Yeah.
And we start to hear muffled screaming.
No.
The captain's stateroom is on the other side of the bulkhead from the control room. Right? We hear muffled screaming. Turn it off! Oh god! Oh
No.
god! Turn it off!
Did it
Turn
all
it
go
off!
to
Turn it
his
off!
stateroom?
It yeah. So it's in his stateroom. He's receiving the world's worst bidet, and we like that's the forward part of the control room, right? Where we hear that. The aft part of the control room, the chef storms in covered in brown stains. The CSC comes in. He says, I don't know what the fuck you guys are doing, but for the love of God, so help me, it's raining shit in my kitchen.
No.
Because they were making lunch. They were making lunch and they were making lasagna, and there was apparently from my friend who was down there was a geyser of shit blanketing the lasagna.
So what happened? Was it instead of it going
They put
overboard, it
the,
started going through like all the toilets and
yeah, they reversed the lineup. So they had like they decided to put the most exhausted, jaded, super done with the situation seamen in charge of this whole procedure, this whole maneuver. And he apparently I'm not a machinist mate. I love the machinist mate. They are magicians, but I'm not one of them. So I don't know how they do it right. But to my knowledge, he pressed like the reverse button.
Like on accident, or like he was like,
Yeah,
screw
yeah,
this.
on accident, completely on accident.
Oh,
Um, Sends shit like raining with like the same force that you would be blowing it overboard, blowing it inboard with like that same pressure. So it's not just leaking; it's blasting out of every sink, every shower, every head. Um, it's going out of the fucking scuttle, like everywhere. Um, it starts. There's like standing shit water in the machinery room on like the lower level, and like the galley's fucked, and we're like 6 hours away from like midshipmen coming aboard for a tour. Like
so I'm
it
assuming
is
that was
hell in a hand.
canceled.
So what we did, it was not.
They didn't cancel it.
Unfortunately, they didn't cancel it. No, they delayed it by by like a day or so, and they get this plastic wrap, this like special plastic wrap. They like section off the ward room. While they clean the galley, while they clean everything, we just have this 20-hour field day where we're just scrubbing and cleaning and scrubbing and cleaning, and the only thing that wasn't contaminated was like a few boxes of hot dogs and tortillas.
Oh, jeez.
So we had to eat hot dogs and tortillas in the wardroom while we like just turn everything upside down. Um, I was just like
At that
I
point,
was so
just
tired.
sink
I was
it.
like,
Everyone get off and just
yeah,
sink it.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
lost
Fuck,
cause.
fuck this boat. Yeah, it's a lost cause. Yeah. So like we get liberty to go out into the town, and then like I think it was like 7 people out of 150 or so had to go to mast. Like there was like so many people getting into brawls and fights and stuff. Like seven people had to go to mass. A lot of people got like counseling chits because we were just causing hell for like down at the academy and down at the bars. When we get back to port, the captain has to report to the squadron commander, has to report to the commodore, because like his crew just rose hell at the Naval Academy and like
Jeez.
fucking trashed the joint. Yeah. Um. So I'm like, it's a few days before before I go to squadron, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, do I want to stay here? Do I want to go to the surface fleet? I want to go to the surface fleet. And like, I, I, I'm just going on. I'm almost there, but there's a day where they're bringing foreign officials, like foreign military personnel. I don't know if you have this in the surface fleet.
What?
But like you have these tours for like military personnel from like other countries.
Sometimes, yeah. Not often, though.
Yeah, yeah. So we had one of those, right? We had like generals, like 1-star generals, and I can't recognize the ranks from other countries really, but like you have these like high-ranking people. This is like a few days after Annapolis, but like we're in port in Virginia. I think we're on like Pier 14. Um, they show up, and all the like lower enlisted personnel, we're either supposed to be like off the boat or like hidden out of sight, right? Out of sight, out of mind, for these people, and like um, I get held back because I have to do quals, I have to do maintenance, and so like I'm kind of hiding in the fan room, um, and where I know that none of these officials are gonna go, and like I'm thinking that they're gone, right? And um, I sneak out. I'm like I just want to go home. Like the rest of my division's gone. I just want to go home. I just want to get out of here. And like I take a step into the control room, and on the other side of the control room, like walking in, is this group of like foreign officials, and there's the chief of the boat, and he's looking at me like he's the command master chief. He's looking at me. He's giving me stink eye. So I'm immediately like going to attention. I'm just standing at attention, right? Because I don't know what else to do. I don't want to run away. I don't want to cause a scene. And so
Yeah.
like they're walking by, and this Australian general, he comes up to me, and I can't do a good Australian accent, but
Oh, it's
he's
best
like,
not to if you
oh
can't.
yeah, he's looking at me. He's like, you're just trying to go home. He's like, you're just looking all spiffy because you want to go home. You want them to let you go home. And I was like, no, sir. I'm like, who got Navy, sir? Um, and it was at that point that I was like, man, like all I'm thinking about all the time is like, I just want to go home. I
Yeah,
just
who
want to go
doesn't think
home.
that?
Yeah. I'm like, fuck, I just want to go home. Like, maybe I should just go home. Like, and so the next day, or it was like a few days, I don't know, at some point in the very near future, in the next few days, I go to Squadron. It's my time to go talk to Squadron Medical. Um, and I lay out my case, I explain what happens, and they're immediately like, we're going to process you for discharge. Like, you can go to the boat, back to the boat if you want, but we don't think you should do that in your mental state. We can process you for medical discharge. And I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm remembering my A school instructor, and I'm thinking like, I don't want to be flipping burgers. I
Yeah.
don't want a dishonorable discharge. I don't want to be fucked. And they're like, no, we'll just process you for medical, not related to disability. You'll get the honor, you'll get the honorable, you'll get everything. And so like, I just, I was like, all right, I don't want to be afraid anymore. So I just, I tapped out. Um, that was, that was September of 2022.
Wow. I think if, as far as like mental health is concerned, like that's a good decision, you know? I mean, I
Yeah.
think the point is that you tried. And you know, not everyone's built for every job. Not everyone can do everything. Not it's like not in a bad way. I'm just saying I think it's you went, it's honorable that you went and tried and you did your best and but you knew it just wasn't
Yeah.
for you. I mean, if anything, it's good because if what if you did clam up when you needed to do something that could cause someone else harm, kind of a thing, which is something that
Yeah.
I worry about. Like for myself, like I will sometimes be like I got offered to go to transfer over to Swick, and I was like, as cool as that sounds, I'm afraid that I'm gonna get my teammates killed. Like I might mess up, and
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think I could live with that. So I could do what I'm doing now
Yeah.
very well. I have no qualms with it, even though it's still some of the things I do could if I mess up, it could cost people's lives, but I'm not worried about it. I work very hard to make sure that doesn't happen, and I don't lose sleep thinking that,
Yeah.
oh, if I constantly fear of that. And I think that's just not good for your mental health. And what if it does happen, you know, because of
Yeah.
that? You know, it's a self check.
Yeah. Exactly. No, I tell myself, I'm like, it was my duty to hand in the towel to say I can't do this. I mean, I got my fish. I you know I did some good. But like I can't do this. I just I don't have it, and it's for the sake of my shipmates, because I don't want them to be hurt, and I don't want them to be killed because of me shutting down. It's like I need to walk away from it.
I think
Me
that's
even
super
saying that, like,
respectful too. Like
yeah,
that's to be able to like self assess and like I respect that 100%.
yeah, I feel guilty though. Like I still feel bad because like to me after I left the Navy, like I had to pay my bonus back, like, but I had some help with my parents. After that, I get offered a job at Electric Boat, and I'm making almost six figures, and I was able to buy a house.
Hell yeah, that's
And
great.
yeah, and it's great and all, but like I still feel like I cheated. Like,
Nah.
yeah,
I think if anything, like so I've heard that before where it's like, oh, why did you stay in? It's like sometimes I wish I did, but you know, this job offer came through and it was really good and it took care of me and my family. Okay, yeah, don't good. That's good. That's a great answer. You know, you do like if you know, it's if you have an opportunity to improve yourself, then take it. If you don't, if you know, sometimes it means taking less money. Sometimes it means just because of the money. There's nothing wrong. A job's a job. You got to. The world revolves
Yeah.
around money. Um, if you feel there, there's some people who give up a job to because they want to serve, and they're like, like I was getting paid more on my other job, but I don't really need the money, and I really want to serve. All right, cool. That doesn't mean anything to
Yeah.
anyone else. That just meant that for that person. And I think not everyone serves for the same. Some people serve for 4 years and get out, and they're like, why? Because I want to go to college. And they're like, oh, so you didn't want to protect the Navy and you want to serve your
Yeah.
country. It's like, calm down, all right? In reality, is that what we're doing? We still agreed to do that. We still agree we're going to do that. But the end game was serve 4 and get out because I want to go to college. They're obviously willing to say, yes, I will at one point possibly risk my life for this country, whether it be going on a submarine or going to war or whatever it be. But after I'm
Yeah.
done, it's an agreement. I agree to give you my life if necessary, as long as 4 years later I get to go to college or I get whatever the situation is. Why are people upset about that? That's the one thing that gets
Yeah.
me, which I hate it when people say, "Oh, good luck flipping burgers if you're not going to be in my navy." I don't want to be in your navy
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think I can give, my former crew credit for is like they were they were really nice about it. I mean, the problem guy, the guy who was hazing me, he was out. He was gone by the time that it was my turn to leave. But they were really nice to me about it, and I I like that, and I respect that from them. And that's one of the reasons why I still miss them so much. Um, I wasn't the only one that tapped after that underweight. There was I think it was the yeoman that I was friends with. He told me it was like up to like 15 people like tapped or transferred to like a shore command.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, like the boat came out. This is the Pasadena. Apparently, it came out as a boat with like the highest tap rate by percentage, like in the entire fleet. Um,
That's scary.
like
I mean, at that point, it's not
yeah,
just. It's not just you at that point. It was also the
yeah,
environment.
yeah, yeah. I miss it. I miss some parts of it. I miss the uniform. Um, I miss that camaraderie. I haven't felt the same connections with other people, not even with my own family. Like I haven't felt the same connections as I did when I was in the sub force. Like just having someone that would has your back, like literally no matter what.
Or
Um,
even the idea of just it's you won't know because you haven't been there, which sounds like a
yeah.
terrible cop out, but it's definitely one of those things where I think it's why
Oh, I'm so
veterans
sorry.
love. I'm sorry. Hello.
1 second.
Yeah.
Hi, can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my phone just I just got a random phone call.
Are
I
you?
guess we could edit that out.
That's fine. We can
You were
also.
saying?
I do actually need to wrap this up here in a little bit because
Oh, I
we're supposed to do
totally.
grocery
Yeah.
shopping. But
Oh,
one
I'm
thing I would
sorry.
say, no, not at all, man. I'm actually really enjoying the conversation, um, which is my point as well. Is that's probably why like veterans will like get together sometimes, even if they're like, yeah, I didn't really have the best experience, but I'm still happy that I had it, kind of a thing. And it's weird because you could just go talk to another vet and they'll have that feeling with you too. Where it's just,
Yeah.
like you and me, even just talking right now, we've never met. Probably, and we have two completely different military experiences too. I've never been on subs, but
Yeah.
yeah, we can still have these kind of conversations where we just vibe with each other.
Yeah. And I have there's lots of sub guys out here in Connecticut, so it's easy to find people to talk to, and knowing that they went through the same thing. So I do have I'm glad that I'm not alone in my experience.
Yeah, that's good
But
too.
yeah, 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 yeah. I thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you for joining and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.